everybody, this is Angel Michael. Welcome to my channel. Today my topic is female pastor criticizes the Billy Graham rule. The article is entitled, "It's Not Billy Graham Rule or Bust," by a female pastor by the name of Tish Harrison Warren from April 27, 2018. This is a really interesting article considering the fact of all the issues that people have now. Even the Me Too movement has actually permeated even into the Christian church. And I want to get into this article. The article is entitled, "It's Not Billy Graham Rule or Bust," and it's written by a priest, a female pastor, by the name of Tish Harrison Warren, April 27, 2018. Of course, I've already mentioned this before, but I don't believe that women have any business whatsoever being pastors. Because it's unbiblical. Okay, now she starts off by actually talking about a tweet from the Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary president, whose name is Danny Akin. He tweeted, "A valuable lesson we all can learn from this tragic situation. Follow at Billy Graham rule. If you are married, never be alone with someone of the opposite sex who is not your spouse, ever." And then this is what she says. "This rule, in its most pristine form, renders male-female relationships impossible. However unintentional, it communicates to women that they are fundamentally dangerous, and it bars men from meaningful mentorship or pastoral care of women and vice versa." And this comment is really stupid. No, it does not render male-female relationships impossible. My question is, why do you have to be alone? If you're not married to this particular woman that you're with, why do you have to be alone with them? And as far as being a mentor, that's another question. Why would you be alone with them? I don't see any reason to be alone. And as far as pastoral care goes, there are several ways you can deal with this issue. You can, if you're in pastoral care and you're counseling a particular female and you're a male counselor, you get her permission to videotape the sessions. That way she can't say that you abused her, and well, it protects both parties, you know. And then of course, you know, the guy wouldn't be attacking or whatever, so both people are protected. And the other way is like what Billy Graham talked about, is having another person in there at the same time. So there is really no reason whatsoever for a guy to be alone with a female, ever. I agree exactly 100% with what Danny Akin said in his tweet. This whole idea of not being able to have friendships with the opposite sex because of it, or not being able to have pastoral care, is nonsense. Then of course she goes on to say that her husband and her both broke the Billy Graham rule, la-ti-da. And she says she understands the motivation behind it. And then she tries to equate the situation very strangely with buckling this seatbelt on a car, and akin to not sharing the road. I don't know what sharing the road has anything to do with that situation. And then she says something about putting the burden on the woman. How is there any burden on a female here? You know, usually it's the woman who's doing the complaining that the guy sexually harassed or whatever. And she keeps saying about women are not welcome in male spaces, not to mention the confusion it poses for those of the same sex attracted. Okay, this is really getting bizarre. I don't know how it puts any burden on a female whatsoever. the burden is on the guy, because if you're alone, then you got to worry about, like I've already said, is she going to say something, make up some false accusation? I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. Her logic is really bizarre. Actually, there is no logic to it at all. So are they supposed to avoid friendships with the opposite sex? No, you don't have to avoid friendships with the opposite sex. My question is, why do you need to be alone with that person? There should always be other people around. I don't ever remember a time in my life where I was actually alone with a young lady. And a long time ago, when people, even when they were dating, they had what they called chaperones. So when the two young persons, male and female, were together, there was another person nearby to make sure there was no inappropriate behavior going on. Call me old-fashioned, but I don't see a thing wrong with that. Talks about how do men and women cultivate self-control, trustworthiness, and transparency, and take up practices that nudge them towards healthy relationship and boundaries. Okay, now this is the ultimate boundary. I mean, people today don't even understand what boundaries are, and this woman obviously does not understand what a boundary is. It's ridiculous. And talking about cultivating self-control, it's the ultimate self-control is to not being hanging around a woman who's not your wife. That's definitely wrong. So she's trying to say that you're trying to avoid any kind of sexual feelings or whatnot, and it really makes no sense. She says, between legalism and license lies the messier space of wisdom and the cultivation of virtue. It is in that space where we as individuals and in relationships flourish. People need meaningful relationships with members of the opposite sex, and they need them to be safe, honoring, full of integrity. Okay, yeah. But so we're supposed to forget about protecting yourself from accusations or whatever. You just to go ahead and absorb yourself in accusations. It doesn't make sense to me. So just go ahead and expose yourself to danger. It's okay. Just like a child just decides, it's not going to hurt me if I stick my hand in the fire. Then they stick it in the fire and find out, yeah, you got burned. It's the same way with an inappropriate relationship, or being in a situation where you might could be with a female and then she decides, well, she may not intentionally, or maybe she does intentionally accuse you of something. And then also it protects the woman too. I don't care whether you are friends or not. You don't know what the other person is thinking. You can't read their thoughts. You don't know if that guy is actually a decent person. Is he going to take advantage of the female? So this rule, Billy Graham rule, protects the guy and the female. She says here, we didn't even know that there were other practices until I asked my husband last week, hey, what are the things that we do to try to exercise wisdom in opposite sex relationships? The problem I see here is that women have to have constant validation from men. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't see the point of are their egos that fragile that they got to have constant attention from another man? That just seems to be an issue that a lot of these women are having. They're so worried that they're not going to get that validation. And I think that's the real problem here, is that they're so worried that there's no men around, that they won't get a validation. And there'll be some jealous female, of course, there, because there's always going to be a woman who's prettier than another woman. That's just my point. Of course, she goes on and gives a whole bunch of things that you're supposed to do to keep from avoid having these entanglements here. It says we're about staying close to each other and talking a lot. If we are legalists about anything on this list, it's having frequent date nights. And I don't understand what that has to do with this whole issue. We have no secrets. Oh, la-di-da, that's nice to know. So I guess she's going to say, oh, honey, guess what? I was with 5 of my male friends, or I was with my male friend today. So I guess she's going to go into some diatribe about what she did with her male friend. Well, you know, that may be the case that if I were dating somebody or married, I don't think I would be jealous, but do I really need to tell all these details about what's going on with during the whole day? My question is, what's the point of you spending all this time with just one person by yourself, especially somebody of the opposite sex? Personally, I think the lady has control issues, and she's got to constantly be knowing exactly what her husband is doing, and having to share this information back and forth. I don't see the point. The only good point in this article she seems to be making here is about hanging out with the opposite sex friends alone at night, say after 9 or 10 p.m. in a hotel room. You're just asking for trouble anyway if you do something like that, for goodness sake, especially if your friend is halfway attracted and you have any kind of attraction to that person. It doesn't make sense. And she says, we have close friends of the opposite sex, but no one as close as our spouse. Which is to say, we don't tell someone of the opposite sex something we haven't told our spouse first. Okay, well, personally, I don't think you should be telling any of your friends your personal business, period. I don't get it. Oh, and she goes in to say, evidently she must want to make sure that her husband doesn't get jealous, that she texts her husband to let him know what she's doing the whole time. And I guess she expects him to do that too. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, who's going to do that? If you're busy at a job, are you going to have time to text your spouse every 5 minutes? Oh, honey, I had to go to the bathroom. I mean, these people are ridiculous. Of course, then she says that the women that her husband hangs out usually are her friends as well. That's fine, I guess, but again, what's the point of spending all this time? I mean, I personally just don't have that many female friends anyway, I guess. And to tell you the truth, I sometimes find it difficult to have conversations with females, because a lot of the times, if you end up saying something that's kind of controversial, you're worried about hurting their feelings or them getting mad at you, and they're always on edge anyway. So I personally prefer to talk to some guys. Most guys don't have their feelings carry their feelings on their sleeves like females do anyway. I don't know. I just don't want to deal with all the drama. A lot of females have got drama issues. I mean, this goes on for several pages. Well, there are a couple of things here that are important. She says she never talks to her to her friends about intimate things about her spouse. Yeah, that's for sure. Why would you talk about something like that with your friends? That's awful. You don't talk about your sex life with your friends. I can't imagine anybody doing that, but I guess there are a lot of people that do that. And this woman claims to be a Christian and a pastor. I certainly hope she doesn't sit around and talk with her friends. Oh, he's really good in bed. I've heard some unsaved women talk like that. Yeah, and she says not to talk with same-sex friends about stuff like that. Now, I agree with that too. No, that sounds like banter that you would hear from unsaved, you know, young people in the locker room. That's not appropriate behavior. And I agree they should pray for their marriage. She says that as well. From an older couple that they knew. So there are a few things that I think that are good, but for the most part, I just don't see that. That's really the main thing she was talking about, is how she had this issue. That was on the first page, at like 5-6 pages here, about there being the idea of rendering opposite sex friendships, making them impossible. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't, like I said earlier, I can't think of any female friend that I was ever really alone with. I think one time I took a lady I knew from church. I drove her across town, but actually I don't think we were alone. I think there was somebody in the back seat. I really don't see the point. And I've already talked about the whole issue of pastoral care. Those are really the only 2 points I see that are important that she mentioned, except for, and yeah, this, she says stuff about she and her husband not keeping things from each other. Well, that should be the case anyway from a married couple. There shouldn't be secrets, but you know, you don't have to text your spouse or your girlfriend or whatever every 5 minutes and tell them what you're doing. Surely you've got, you know, enough trust with that particular person if you supposedly love them. Well, I don't want to keep rambling on, but I just thought this article was really strange. And I just don't understand this type of thinking. I mean, with the whole issue of Me Too going on, and it's not just adult females you have to worry about, but you have to worry about young people and children. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Now, this happened a few years back. We had an elderly gentleman who had known. He passed away, but I'd known him for many years, and I grew up with his family. And his daughter was a really good friend of mine. Well, a lady who had lived out of town, I didn't know her. She didn't go to our church, but she allowed her children to come. I think she dropped them by every Sunday. We had a little Sunday school class for them. They were twin girls. I'm going to call them, I'm not going to get the real names, but I call them Lisa and Annie. And they were 11 years old. Lisa was really smart. Annie was a sweet girl, the other twin, but she was a little slow. She was LD, had learning problems, and I think she had some emotional issues. The mother's name was Tammy. That's not a real name. But anyway, Tammy didn't go to our church. She went to another church and just dropped the children off. Well, this elderly gentleman, I'm going to call him Mr. M. Mr. M is a sweet man. He, godly Christian man. And, you know, just like any elderly gentleman, he has grandchildren of his own. He came over and gave Annie, the 11-year-old slow child, a hug. And I thought it was strange. Annie kind of pulled away like she was afraid of him or didn't like the idea he was hugging her. But I didn't think about anything of it at first. I just figured, well, maybe she doesn't like being touched. Well, I know at that time there was a whole issue at the schools talking about inappropriate. And it's a really important issue. The children know there is a difference between a hug and touching someone in an inappropriate way. Well, I don't think Annie understood the difference between a hug and being sexually harassed or abused. Obviously, a hug is not abuse, but touching somebody in their genitals, on their butt, or a female on their breasts would be inappropriate behavior and sexual misconduct. But she didn't understand the difference between a hug and sexual misconduct. Now, I blame the mother for not explaining that properly to her. I don't blame the child because I don't think she knew any better. Even though I think it's strange that an 11-year-old girl would not understand the difference between a hug, a friendly hug, and sexual misconduct. But anyway, be that as it may. So what happened is that, this happened at church, and I was there. Mr. M hugged the girl, and then later, evidently, she must have told her mother that Mr. M touched her in a sexual way, and she felt uncomfortable. But of course, that's not true because everybody was there watching, and they saw him hug her. So, but the thing is, Tammy, the mother, didn't bother checking up on the situation, find out, did Mr. M actually do anything bad, or was this a misunderstanding on Annie's part? And she didn't bother asking him, and she definitely didn't ask anybody at church. I only saw the woman in person maybe twice the whole time those children were going to our church. But she was just going around saying all kinds of nasty things about this Mr. M, this elderly gentleman. So I have absolutely disdain for this woman. I have no respect whatsoever. She didn't do her job as a parent. She should have checked up and found out whether or not Annie even understood what was going on. So that was one of the things I have here in the issue that I have with this woman's article, is that, let's say that Mr. M had been alone with Annie. You see, the reason why the situation didn't escalate and go any further is because people were there, and they didn't believe anything that this woman was saying, and she didn't go to the police to report it. I just think deep down she knew that her daughter just wasn't all there mentally, so nothing was pursued. But I still was very angry, and to this day, I still do not like this woman because of it. I've forgiven her for, but I still don't like her, because I think it's ridiculous that she didn't teach her child the difference between appropriate touching and inappropriate touching. Of course, this girl is all grown up now, so surely by this age, she's be in her 20s now, surely she would know the difference between a hug and sexual misconduct. So my point here is that if Mr. M had been alone with this girl, he would not have any protection whatsoever. If the girl Annie had told her mother most likely would have gone to the police. But since this was something that occurred in public, she didn't do anything about it. But there is no way in the world that I would carry a child, or a grown woman for that matter, or a teenager, by myself. I did that one time, and luckily I was, of course it wasn't a child, it was an adult person. I don't think I'd do it again after all this Me Too stuff is taking place. It's just not safe. It's not. There's no reason that any guy should have to worry about, being accused of something they didn't do. And because the thing is, with this Me Too movement that's going on, these women are accusing guys of doing some pretty awful things without any proof whatsoever. It's like they're being, and it's being thrown all over social media. They're being judged on social media from opinions, and it's just not right. Presumption of innocence is just being thrown out the window, and it has to actually go to court, and hopefully when they go to court they actually give the poor guy a chance, and hopefully they will have some proof, if there was a supposed rape or an alleged rape, there should be the rape kit, and have the DNA to match to prove that there was actually a rape. But anyway, I don't want to make this any longer, but please leave your questions, comments, or whatever, but please be respectful and be an adult. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a good day. God bless.